Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our Wall of Honor ceremony. We started this ceremony back in 2015. It was the brainchild of Tony Lubrano, and tonight we'll be inducting the 11th person to the Wall of Honor here at Mineola Village Hall. Right now, I'd like to welcome, as our next speaker, the mayor of the Incorporated Village of Mineola, Mr. Paul Pereira.
Thank you, Lou, and welcome. And as Lou mentioned, this has become a tradition. I certainly remember the first event that we had here, and at that time, Lou Sanders was still with us, and having it, of course, named in honor of John DeVanzo was something that was fitting and special, and I'll allow Senator Martins to speak a little bit about the legacy of Mr. DeVanzo. I'd like to, of course, recognize and welcome the Village Board. We have Deputy Mayor Janine Sartori here with us. We have Trustees Clark, Solosky, and Casado. We also have Councilman, usually sitting in the 7th row, but today sitting in the 1st row, Councilman Dennis Walsh. And we do have the privilege, I hope the Katz family notices that we have a mayor from Portugal here with us today. We just did a sister city agreement, and Mayor Diamantino Sabina from Estereja, by way of Yonkers, he was born in Yonkers, is here with us today. So welcome, Mayor, and thank you. I'm going to let the subsequent speakers speak about the Wall of Honor's namesake and, of course, the recipient this year. But as a young boy growing up in Mineola, I've been here for 47 years, from 1977. I can certainly remember vividly the Katz name, for sure. It's one of those things that is just associated with Mineola growing up here. Asher's, Katz, there were these businesses that you just kind of get. Reese Buick, I remember, Frame Chevrolet. These are just some of those family names that stick with you from your youth. Roberts, which thankfully is still around, and we're glad that the Katz name is still strong in Mineola. So as someone who is a history teacher, of course it is very, very important to me to make sure that our history is not forgotten, and those that played such a pivotal role in our first 100 years are recognized for the next 100 years, so that generations to come will look at that wall and will perhaps dig a little deeper. And I think today's honoree, this evening's honoree, is very special because we've tried to make a commitment that although elected officials, mayors, and others, of course, played a vital role in the development of our village, that we not just, make this a wall about, former elected officials. In this case, we have a business person, a member of the Chamber of Commerce, and yes, also someone who was an elected official, and all of those things make this year's selection, I think, especially poignant because it does, in fact, demonstrate to the community that we do recognize people who contribute to our village in many ways, not just because you were elected or you were mayor, and I think it's important to do that. So I would like to also thank all of you that are here this evening, whether it be from the Historical Society, of course, from the Chamber, members of the public, because it is important that we be here to support the family, to recognize the recipient. And I tell you that every time I walk into this building, I look at that wall and I love the way that it's filling up. When we first started, and Lou Sanders was the first one up there, kind of lonely, and slowly we made up that first row, and now we're well into the second row, and I think it's going to look really, really nice as it fills up, and I just think it's a great idea, and thank you to Tony and Mayor Strauss for having that idea about 10 years ago. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce State Senator, former Mayor of the Village of Mineola, my good friend, Jack Martins, to speak to us a little bit about John DeVanzo. Senator Martins.
Oh, wonderful to be here. First, congratulations to our honorees, the family. A great honor, but certainly well-deserved. When Tony's been at this for a while. Tony Lubrano, for those of us who know him and have worked with him, He's not someone who will take no or maybe for an answer. And so over time, we had discussions about how do we honor the history of the village. The village celebrated 100 years in 2006. It was incorporated in 1906, has a rich history, is the county seat. There are a whole bunch of people who made this village what it is. It didn't just appear out of thin air. There are personalities involved, and there was an effort to try and recognize the personalities that contributed to making this village the great village that it is. And so we thought about how do we do that and how do we honor the legacy going back 100 years. And there are certainly personalities, and the Historic Society can certainly tell us about some of those, but there are names that haven't yet made it onto that wall that will. We can talk about Smokey Joe Nahowick. We can talk about first fire chief / mayor in the village's history, who guided the village post-World War II years through the 50s at a time of great growth in the village when we went from farms to actually a suburban community. But the decision was made, and it was an easy decision and frankly unanimous decision to name the Wall of Honor after John DeVanzo. And and I know I'm sitting here talking to people who had the opportunity to know John, met John, worked with John. John was Mr. Mineola. John was born here, grew up here, raised his family here, had a business here, was active not only in civic life, in the church, volunteering, in everything. I had the opportunity with Mayor Strauss at the time, Chief Strauss, when I was mayor, to go to Asheville, North Carolina, because John DeVanzo was receiving the National Firefighter of the Year award. Think about that for a second. A guy from Mineola was awarded the National Firefighter of the Year award, and that just spoke to who he was. Village trustee, town councilman, town clerk, back to village trustee. And when he left, you remember what he did? He volunteered, and he continued to volunteer at St. Francis Hospital and right out here, so he could greet people as they came in and direct them to where they wanted or needed to go. So it is certainly fitting that the village of Mineola that he cared so much about grew up around him for all of those years. Did I forget to mention Normandy invasion survivor? Ship sunk in the Normandy invasion, came home. I mean, it is a remarkable story. But if we had to pick someone from the first 100 years of our village to celebrate, someone who gave of himself his entire life, well, there's no one other than John DeVanzo, and that's why he was our first honoree. The wall is named after him, and everyone else was someone who worked with him, someone he touched, and all together made this the great village that it is for now, the 118 years that it has been incorporated. Quick fact, nobody from the Historical Society can help answer, and nor any history teachers. So Mineola is the county seat of Nassau County. But it was a competition. Nobody just gave it to Mineola. Does anyone know who the two villages were that fought over the county seat back when Nassau County seceded from Queens to form Nassau County? Anyone remember or know who the two villages were that competed to be the county seat of Nassau County? Oh, not Gardens. Come on now, Garden City. Stewart hadn't even started building Garden City yet. Come on. The village of Hempstead. So it was between the village of Hempstead and the village of Mineola to determine who was going to be the county seat for this new county of Nassau. And of course, the better village won and continues to win. Congratulations to the Katz family. As the mayor said, I remember playing baseball and Little League here in Mineola. And there was always a team sponsored by the Katz family. And that just is a small element of commitment to the community, business leader, leader in the chamber, trustee, and someone who always gave. And it's certainly fitting that the Katz family and the legacy be recognized on the Wall of Honor. But let's all take a moment to thank John DeVanzo for having served all of those years at the detriment of the family, and thank you so much for sharing them with all of us all of those years. But let's take a moment to just think about what it is to be 92 years old and to have given every day of your life to making things better for those around you, which is exactly what he did. Mayor, thank you.
And I also would like to recognize that we have Mr. DeVanzo's daughter, Mary, here with us today. So thank you, Mary. She never misses a day. Thank you. I know that Mary is very proud of her dad and the fact that we keep his legacy alive. I believe it's going to be 10 years, 10 years this year, right? Exactly. I do remember well. One thing that Senator Martins didn't mention, right until the end, if you ever shook John DeVanzo's hand, you knew it. I mean, he had a vice grip. I mean, he looked you right in the eye and he would squeeze your hand. Yeah, is that Mr. DeVanzo's profile? I don't know. But I would invite Gary and the family up to say a few words about your grandfather to maybe. Did who want to say something? I think as tradition normally would have, nope. I think nobody knows him better than you do. So I think perhaps, I don't know if you want to bring up any other family members, but now to tell us a little bit about the honoree, Harry Katz, is Gary Katz.
I want to thank everybody, the village, the chamber, and the residents abroad that nominated my grandfather to the Wall of Honor. It's a very special honor, especially being next to his friend John DeVanzo. When my grandfather started in the Mineola government there as a trustee, John DeVanzo was the little guy in town. He was the kid, and he looked up to my grandfather. My grandfather was very close friends with him. John's older sister used to babysit for my father and aunt. So my family goes way back with John. We're glad to join the other people that were on his ticket, Ed Smith and Stan Krause, those were the four big names in Mineola at the time, in the early 60s, on through to the 70s. My grandfather served for 16 years as a trustee, served as deputy mayor, and even served as mayor when Stan Krause had a heart attack. And he loved the village. His second part of his life was the fire department. My grandfather spent 49 3/4 years on the Mineola Fire Department. He only left when the fire department wanted to throw him a 50th anniversary party. And my grandfather said, "Daddy, you crazy? I resigned. Take that money and put it towards a fire truck." That's the type of selfless guy that he was. He didn't want to need the kudos and get the attention, get another plaque or trophy. The thing that he loved, the fire department, was the most important thing. So if they have funds to do that, give it to the fire department. Family spent a long time in Mineola. My great-grandfather came to the country in 1890. With the help of Teddy Roosevelt, he helped to fix the wheel to his carriage when it had broken down in Oyster Bay. And my great-grandfather used to call in Teddy Roosevelt. He used to call in Sagamore Hill. And Teddy told him that once the village was named, he named Mineola, the village, the county seat of Long Island. My great-grandfather said, well, that's where we got to move. We're going to move into the county seat. I'm going to be by the train station, and this is where we've got to be. So in 1912, it was a few years later, he was living in Main Street in Roslyn, where my grandfather was born. 1904, I don't know if any of you guys remember U.S. Blues. You're young for that, Paul. Back in the late 70s, early 80s, it was a house right next to the grist mill on Main Street in Roslyn. The great-grandfather moved into that house in 1900, and my grandfather was born in a back room in 1904. So he grew up right down on Main Street in Roslyn, and at that time there was a trolley that went from Port Washington through Roslyn and up into Mineola. So when they moved, my grandfather was, he was only 8 years old when he moved to Mineola in 1912. My grandfather was working for a furniture store at the time, and then he opened up his first furniture store. When my grandfather was 16 or less, he started working for him, and that's how we started. In 1924, my great-grandfather built what was the first steel structure in Mineola, steel frame structure, and at the time, the largest furniture store on Long Island. Right on Main Street, I think building the lot where Seafield Center currently sits. It was a wonderful store. My grandfather worked for him there. Unfortunately, the Depression came, and he lost that during the Depression. And at that point, my grandparents, Harry and Yetta, took the leftover linoleum, a couple ice boxes, stoves, some area rugs, and started Harry Katz Floor Covering Appliances in a little storefront on Main Street with an apartment above. From there, he moved 4 times, I'm told, but one of them I'm not sure of. He moved to Jericho Turnpike, where Jay's department store used to be. And then he was on Mineola Boulevard, where the Arista stationery, I believe, was, before he built the store that we're currently in. No, I don't know what else to say, except thank you. It's just so much that, my family, I grew up coming to Mineola, to the Christmas parties at the firehouse. And since I moved back into New York in 1985, I've been here, a member of the Chamber Board since then. And my sister's working beside me still. And we're very proud to be carrying on my grandfather's legacy. He was a very special man with special visions, and he did a great job. And I gotta leave out, my father did a lot along the way too, carrying on the business, and he was involved in many organizations. He's a man a year for 3 or 4 of them. But thank you, everyone, for putting him up onto the Wall of Honor. I'm very proud to have him there, and it's a very special honor. Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Very well deserved. Congratulations. I would ask everyone now if you'll just exit, and we're going to go to unveil the plaque. So if everyone will just meet us in the lobby. And then after that, the Chamber will be having dinner over at Lisbon Cafe on Mineola Boulevard.